Hi, this is Gadi Elkhan with Selig Film News. We're here with the director from Cast in India, Natasha Raheja. Natasha, this is an interesting story. So you're just walking around the streets and you notice something specific that leads you on this journey. What was that specific thing you noticed?
So I was walking along the streets of New York City one day, which is where I live. I'm originally from Texas, but I live there now. And I looked at the ground beneath my feet and saw "Made in India" emblazoned on manhole covers on the sidewalk streets and the streets, and thought, huh, that's curious. I wonder why these 100-pound manhole covers are being made so many thousands of miles away, and I wanted to learn more about this circuit of exchange. So I ended up making a film about the people who make the covers.
How did your research go? How did you kind of look into it? When did you get that moment where you figured it out, and then you're starting to make the decision, I want to cover this, I want to film this?
Right, yeah. So there were some, things I had to identify during pre-production before I would know if I could make this film or not. So I did a lot of research. I called different foundries. There are hundreds of foundries in West Bengal, and they specialize in making sanitary and agricultural castings. And I read about the technical process, so I would have an idea of what kind of shots I might get, and I did a treatment. And I also practiced shooting at a foundry in Brooklyn.
Oh,
So
wow.
there's a bronze casting foundry for artists there, and I practiced shooting.
What was it like flying over there? What were you thinking? What were you hoping to get? And did everything you hoped come about in that? Because you were only there once.
Yes, so I have been to India several times. I also do research there, but I, for this purpose, went for one shoot. And I was a little bit nervous. I didn't know how, the people would receive me and how the workers would receive me, and if I would have their permission and access. But once I went, I was very welcomed, and I had a successful time.
We get to see some interesting parts of the men, their conversations, their sense of humor, and their everyday work environment. It's kind of a dirty place, but these guys are having fun, it seems like, the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
What was shocking or interesting to you about your reaction to seeing all this? Did you expect it to be this way, or not?
Right. So, I think they work, and they have, it's a grind. It's not the most.
It's tough work.
It's really tough manual work, and it takes a toll. But I think workers, we all have an ability to kind of make the best with what we have, and I think that the workers should and can be compensated a lot more. But they, as you do see in the film, have dignity and have humor, and that comes through. For me, it was a little bit dissonant to be there. It was kind of strange being in India, seeing bits and pieces of New York City anatomy and seeing bits and pieces of the United States anatomy, city anatomy in terms
Yeah.
of infrastructure. So these foundries export castings to all kinds of places, and so that was kind of strange to see.
That's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
We did kind of get to see the political side of things in the foundries. The element of the strike, if you will, or the attempt at a strike. And I love a portion of the workers who are maybe on a higher echelon than the others. Their reaction to it is very simple. If we get involved, this shuts everything down.
Mm-hmm.
That dynamic was fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Did you go knowing, I don't think you knew that would happen, but when you saw that all going down, what was that experience like?
Yeah, so I wasn't prepared for that. I didn't know that I would be at the site during the middle of union contract negotiations. So these workers are unionized, and West Bengal is one of the few places in India where there is proportionately a little bit higher union density. And so these workers are unionized, and they were in the middle of negotiations when I was there and determining what their agreement would be. And some of them thought that the agreement should be greater than what they were receiving and were prepared to call for a job place action. But at the end of the day, the union leaders decided to settle. And they do. So there is, amongst as you notice, there are various levels of workers, and those in the film that are prepared to walk off the job are one of the higher skilled worker categories, and they're compensated a little bit more.
And I don't want to give too much about the end, but I
Yeah.
love the fact that we get to see their personality and just them getting dressed.
Mm-hmm.
And that also comes, I think, maybe to those levels. I think not that you show like different people getting dressed, but what was it like giving that slight touch of these guys are going back to regular life after this. This
Mm-hmm.
isn't, this isn't like a Nike sweat camp or some harsh story. These guys are hardworking men,
Mm-hmm.
and they're providing for the families. And
Right.
some of them, might go party afterwards because they get dressed up
Yeah.
nicely. Like the reality of their regular life being shown
Mm-hmm.
on film. What was that experience like?
Right, yeah, I wanted to show, first, it was very important to me to show, especially because this will be playing mostly for Western audiences, that, these aren't people that we need to feel sorry for. I think guilt is the most kind of like the easiest reaction, and really the reality is a lot more complicated than that. So it was important for me to show that these workers are dignified and they're proud of what they do, but at the same time, it's complicated, as you said, it's not as if even those who do work in the conditions in this factory are quite difficult, and so it's not as if those who do work in maybe even more egregious workplaces in terms of their labor conditions don't have fun and aren't dignified and don't party, right? And so I just wanted to kind of show the complex reality of this workplace. And
it's not only a difficult environment, it can be very dangerous.
Yes.
We talked a little bit on the red carpet about the iron casting and the heat, and I was amazed by the speed of what they're doing. And it's not, I guess nonchalant could be a word, but it's nonchalant because they're experienced.
Right.
What did you think of seeing these men just move this dangerous liquid? Like it could have been disastrous at any point, but these guys, no, this is what they do every day.
Right, yeah. So there's a particular moment in the foundry when the a few hours after the furnace is turned on and the molten iron pours out, and so the whole foundry kind of takes on this more serious demeanor, and it's embodied in the workers' kind of practice and the way that they carry themselves. So the film also follows that trajectory because it's a little bit lighthearted, they're singing, they're joking, and then the kind of mood shifts when the iron turns on. And so they're very acutely aware of the danger, but as you noticed, the workers are very, experienced, and for them, they follow safety protocols very closely by being attentive.
Since this is made for Western audiences, like you said, this is going to be mostly shown here. It's made to show, hey, that manhole cover was made by this big group of people. What are you hoping audiences get from this experience?
Well, I'm always happy to see what different audiences, bring to the film and the kinds of questions they ask and what thoughts it provokes. But for me, I kind of was able to reflect on how we are kind of implicated in these geographies of production. So while we might think that, the U.S. is no longer as industrialized, how might we think of a geography of industrialization differently? And so think of how our own consumption is implicated and how these kind of workplaces, where they are, who makes what. Actually Made in India is stamped so boldly on manhole covers because of a requirement of American foundry workers. When the production was outsourced, it was a movement of American foundry workers to make it known to Americans that these objects were being outsourced. But yeah, and so I think I wanted people to maybe reflect and not reflect on our built environments and think about the labor infrastructure that's behind our built environments, and think about maybe why are they so invisible and why is it so obscured from our purview.
It does seem like Western culture, we see made in India, made in China, in everything.
Right.
And yet we don't necessarily even think once or twice about that infrastructure that has to be over there to do all this work, and the people behind that. Was it fun to show that? I mean, that you're opening a door very much for people to see something they may never have even thought to think of.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I think is so wonderful about the genre of documentary, and I'm really honored to be at the Dallas International Film Festival. I grew up in Dallas, and I'm alumna of Duncanville High School, and so it's really wonderful to be part of a documentary shorts program and, you know, see glimpses into things we might not have pondered before, and that's what I was able to do through this documentary.
Is it nice to have a homecoming? I mean, this is very much a homecoming, and what does that feel like? It's not every time you get to come home with the film, if you will.
Right, yeah. I had grown up going to films in Dallas and going to the Angelica, and I'm not sure I had thought that I would ever get to screen there. So I'm really thrilled about it, and I'm just so happy that I can share this moment and the screenings with my family and friends.
Oh. There's some amazing documentary films here at the festival. Have you been able to see any, or are you looking at like, oh, I've got to catch that? Because as a documentary filmmaker, we just talked to another documentary filmmaker. It's impressive what DIF does for the documentary world. I think it's a passion for James and Sarah and the team to bring very well done, well made documentaries, maybe even more so than narrative film. What are your feelings about just being a part of such an amazingly strong documentary field?
I feel really honored, and that's one thing that I really appreciate about the Dallas International Film Festival and the programmers, kind of their commitment to bringing strong documentary to Dallas audiences. And the feature lineup is quite impressive, as is the documentary short lineup. I was floored to be paired with such strong other documentaries, and I hope that viewers will check them out.
I definitely hope people will check out Cast in India, because it is something unique to see this, and I know I enjoyed it. So thank you for bringing it. Thank you for coming home and being a part of this. So it should be special for audiences to see this.
Thank you so much.